What if I told you that your pain isn't a sign of weakness, but a signal from your soul? That the ache you feel when trying to let go of someone isn't something to be suppressed, but to be understood. We've been taught to hold on, to fight for, love, to chase closure. But what if healing doesn't come from holding on, but from finally, gently letting go? Imagine this. Everything you think you need from someone else might actually be a message from your inner self asking for your attention. The attachment, the obsession, the emotional roller coaster, these aren't random, they are clues. Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant minds in psychology and philosophy, believed that the key to understanding our emotions lies not in resisting them, but in listening to them, especially the ones we try hardest to avoid. In this video, we'll take a different path. We'll explore how to emotionally detach from someone not through indifference or avoidance, but through deep self-awareness. This isn't about becoming cold or unfeeling. It's about reclaiming your power, your peace, and your self-worth. Let's begin. How many times have you held on to someone because letting go felt like losing control? As if the only way to preserve your sanity was to preserve the connection, even when that connection was hurting you. Control. That word. It sounds safe, responsible, strong. But in the realm of emotions, it's often a mask, a desperate attempt to avoid the vulnerability of uncertainty. We try to control outcomes, conversations, even other people's feelings because the idea of surrendering to what is terrifies us. But here's a truth that may feel uncomfortable. Control is an illusion. You can't control how someone loves you. You can't control when they leave or if they ever truly understood you. And the more you try, the more you suffer. Carl Jung believed that suffering often comes not from events themselves, but from our resistance to them. We resist change, we resist endings. We resist the truth that love, like life, is impermanent. When you cling to someone emotionally, what you're often clinging to is a version of the future that no longer exists, a fantasy you built on hope. And hope, though beautiful, can be dangerous. When it refuses to let reality in, letting go then is not weakness, it's clarity. It's choosing reality over illusion. It's understanding that peace doesn't come from controlling the other, but from freeing yourself. As Montaigne once wrote, "My life has been full of terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened. The fear of letting go is often worse than the reality of it." So today ask yourself, what are you really afraid of losing? The person? Or the illusion of control you thought they gave you? When you begin to release that illusion, you open space for truth, for healing, for yourself. Why does it hurt so much to let go of someone, even when we know deep down they weren't right for us? Carl Jung would tell us that it's not always the person we're mourning, but the part of ourselves we projected onto them. In every deep attachment, there is a hidden mirror, a reflection of something internal that we long to heal, understand, or reclaim. When you fell for that person, what exactly were you falling for? Was it their presence, or the way you felt? In their presence, the security, the validation, the sense of being needed or seen? Often, what we cling to is not the person themselves, but the emotional resonance they carried for us. Jung's theory of projection explains this beautifully. He believed that we unconsciously project unacknowledged parts of ourselves onto others, especially those we love. In doing so, we create an emotional bond, not just with who they are, but with who they allow us to be in their presence. Think about it. Perhaps you saw strength in them because you hadn't owned your own. Perhaps their attention made you feel worthy because a part of you still questions your value. And so, when they leave, it feels like those pieces are leaving too. But here's the truth. They were never the source. they were the mirror. This is the painful gift of heartbreak. It forces us to retrieve our projections, to reclaim the parts of ourselves we handed over. And though it hurts, this process is sacred. As Jung famously said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That truth also applies to everything that captivates us, that draws us in, that breaks us when it ends. So ask yourself, what did this person awaken in me? What did I believe they completed? The answer to those questions is not just insight, it's a map back to yourself. There's a reason letting go feels like dying, because in a way it is. It's the death of a dream. The death of an identity you built around that connection. The death of who you were when you were with them. And death, even symbolic, is terrifying. It leaves a void, and we are wired to avoid voids at all costs. But Carl Jung saw this differently. To him, these little deaths, the end of relationships, the collapse of illusions, the letting go of attachments, were initiations, gateways, not ends, but beginnings. When we let go, we don't just lose, we uncover. Beneath the pain is something raw, yes, but also real. A self that is no longer defined by someone else's gaze. A self that can breathe again, and yet we resist. We mourn the past version of ourselves that felt whole with another. We fear that without them we are less. But this is the lie our wounded ego tells us, that we are incomplete, alone. Jung would argue that this fear arises from a disconnection with our inner world. When we over-identify with relationships, we lose touch with our own soul. We outsource, meaning instead of cultivating it from within. This is why letting go feels like death. It is the death of dependency. And in that death, a new life begins. Leo Tolstoy, who himself endured an existential crisis, wrote that he only began to understand life when he stopped seeking meaning in the external and turned inward. The transformation, he said, didn't come from answers, but from a new way of being. So what is being asked of you right now isn't to forget or erase, but to release. To let the old self die so that something stronger, wiser, more whole can emerge. Grief is not a sign you've failed to move on. It's a sacred process, a birth canal for the next version of you. And that version is waiting, just on the other side of surrender. We live in a world addicted to noise, constant updates, endless conversations, the pressure to explain, to justify, to perform. But when you're in the midst of emotional detachment, silence is not emptiness. It's power. Silence, when chosen consciously, becomes a declaration.
A boundary. A shield. Carl Jung believed that the self speaks in whispers, in dreams, in quiet moments of awareness. Yet most of us drown that voice in external validation and reactive behavior. We feel the urge to respond to everything, to text
back, to post, to seek closure through endless dialogue, but not every message deserves a reply. Not every emotion demands a performance. There is strength in the stillness. When you choose silence, you're not avoiding, you're reclaiming, you're refusing to let others dictate your energy or define your story. You're stepping out of the emotional entanglement and choosing inner sovereignty. And here's a powerful truth. Mystery creates magnetism. The less you explain, the more others wonder. The more you center yourself, the more your presence speaks without a word. Harvard psychologist Amy Cuddy once observed that true presence doesn't come from how much we speak. It comes from how fully we own our space. Being unreachable, misunderstood as it is not about arrogance. It's about emotional maturity. It's choosing your peace over proving your point. So, the next time you're tempted to send that message, to clarify your intentions, to seek one last word, pause. Ask yourself,
Does this come from clarity or from craving? Because silence, when born from clarity, is sacred. And in that silence, you find your voice again. Dependency is rarely loud. It often wears a quiet mask of loyalty, of love, even of self-sacrifice. But behind its softness hides a truth we rarely want to face. Sometimes what we call love is actually fear in disguise. Carl Jung believed that the aspects of ourselves we avoid, deny, or disown become part of what he called the shadow, the unconscious realm where our repressed traits and fears live. Emotional dependency is one such shadow. We don't see it as a weakness, we justify it as devotion. But if being with someone becomes the only way we know how to feel whole, we've lost contact with our center. When you depend on someone to feel valuable, secure, seen, or stable, you're giving away parts of your soul. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow erosion, tiny compromises, swallowed truths, unmet needs that we stop naming. All for the sake of staying close. Jung would say, what we fail to integrate controls us. And the longer we deny our dependency, the more it shapes our choices from the shadows. But here's the hope. Every shadow can be brought to light. The first step is honesty. Radical honesty. Ask yourself, not judgmentally, but curiously, what am I afraid of if I stand alone? What part of myself do I avoid when I'm not in this relationship? In 2020, a study published by the American Psychological Association found that people with higher emotional independence reported greater life satisfaction, especially in long-term relationship dynamics. Autonomy, it turns out, isn't a threat. To intimacy, it deepens it. To emotionally detach doesn't mean to stop caring. It means caring from a place of wholeness, not of hunger. It means loving someone not because they complete you, but because you've completed the inner work of accepting yourself. So don't be afraid to look into the shadow of your dependency. That shadow is not your enemy. It's your teacher. It holds the lessons you need to finally walk freely, to love cleanly, and to stay rooted, even as others come and go. Boundaries. The word alone makes some people uncomfortable. We've been taught that love means openness, availability, sacrifice. That saying yes is generous, and saying no is selfish. But Carl Jung would challenge that, because a life without boundaries isn't compassion, it's collapse. Emotional boundaries are not walls, they are gates. They don't block love, they protect it. They ensure that love is given freely, not extracted under pressure. And they allow us to stay connected to others without abandoning ourselves in the process. When we don't know how to say no, we end up saying yes to things that fracture us. We agree to one-sided relationships. We tolerate behavior that eats away at our peace. We give until we're empty, and then wonder why we feel resentful or invisible. But here's the truth. A sacred no is a yes to your dignity, a yes to your values, a yes to the version of you that refuses to perform for approval. Jung believed that boundaries are not just psychological tools, they are spiritual declarations. When you define what you will and will not allow, you're not closing your heart, you're honoring your soul. A 2018 study from the University of California found that individuals who assert healthy emotional boundaries experience significantly less stress, fewer depressive symptoms, and a greater sense of identity integrity. Boundaries are not just protection, they are healing. So how do you begin? Start small. Say no without explanation. Decline the call that drains you. Let the message sit unanswered. Let your silence be the answer when the energy isn't right. You do not need to be accessible to everyone all the time. You do not need to prove your worth through availability.
And most of all, you are not required to carry what others refuse to heal. Boundaries are sacred because they define the sacred space of you. And when you guard that space with love, not fear, you teach others how to treat it too. So say it, softly or firmly. Whisper it or roar it. Know and feel how that one word can echo with truth and with freedom. There's a quiet fear that comes with emotional detachment. The fear of becoming numb, disconnected, indifferent. Many confuse detachment with coldness, as if pulling back from emotional chaos means shutting off the heart. But true detachment, as Jung would argue, is not about closing, it's about choosing. It's not about being unreachable, it's about being rooted. When you detach from someone, you're not saying they don't matter, you're saying you matter too, that your peace is no longer negotiable, that your energy is not a resource to be mined endlessly. Carl Jung emphasized the value of individuation, the process of becoming your whole, authentic self. Detachment is part of that journey. It's the act of disentangling your identity from another's behavior, of recognizing where you end and they begin. This doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you stop bleeding. When you love from a place
of fullness rather than need, your love becomes purer. You're not clinging to be saved, you're offering from overflow.
And when someone steps away, it doesn't destroy you, it simply shifts the space they once held. According to a 2022 article in Psychology Today, emotionally mature individuals often report the greatest relational satisfaction, not because they feel less, but because they feel wisely. They know when to engage and when to step back. They love deeply, but not destructively. So how do you practice this? You slow down. You notice your emotional triggers. You learn the difference between reaction and response. You take space when needed and return only when grounded. You build rituals that connect you to your essence: journaling, meditation, solitude, time in nature. And most of all, you give yourself permission to love without losing yourself. Detachment isn't the absence of love, it's the presence of clarity. It's saying, I see you, I care for you, but I will not abandon me to hold you. And when you live from that center, something shifts. You stop performing. You stop proving. You stop chasing closure in places that offer none. You become steady, whole, warm, not because you're burning yourself to keep others warm, but because you've become your own fire. There's a final step in emotional detachment that few talk about, but Jung understood it deeply. It's the alchemy that happens after the silence, after the boundaries, after the grief. It's when the pain stops being something you avoid and starts becoming something you transform. Inner alchemy is
not magic.
It's not forgetting, it's not pretending, it's taking the raw, broken pieces of your past, your heartbreak, your longing, your disappointment, and turning them into something radiant, something that feeds your growth instead of draining your strength. Carl Jung believed that the integration of pain was essential to the soul's evolution. That healing wasn't about eliminating darkness, but embracing it, learning from it, letting it shape you into something wiser. It's in this stage that you stop asking, why did they do this to me, and begin asking, what part of me allowed this to continue? Not from blame, but from awakening. When you alchemize your pain, you stop living in reaction. You become the author of your own story. And slowly, subtly, beautifully, you begin to desire peace more than attention, presence more than performance. A 2019 study from the Journal of Positive Psychology revealed that people who reframe past, emotional pain as meaningful experience report higher levels of long-term well-being. It's not about erasing the past, it's about redefining it. So here's the truth. The person you had to let go, the connection that collapsed,
the silence that followed, it all brought you here. And here is not emptiness, here is power, here is self-respect, here is the sacred space where you meet yourself again. This is not the end of a love story. It's the beginning of a soul story. And as you walk forward, you don't do so hardened, you do so whole. You've transmuted pain into wisdom, silence into presence, loneliness into solitude. And now, you move not to chase anything, but simply to continue becoming. That is the quiet miracle of detachment. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to breathe that in. You're not broken, you're blooming. And if you felt seen, here, share this with someone else who might need it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and watch the next one we've carefully crafted to help you grow even further. You've already begun to let go. Now ask yourself, who are you finally ready to become? Until next time, be kind to your soul.